Welcome to the podcast, Rachel. As we could start off by you kindly telling my audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you know, my name's Rachel. So I'm 28 years old and I live in Bradford in West Yorkshire. So my business that I started is Tipsy Bakes UK. So I do like alcohol-infused bakes, so like cupcakes, cheesecakes, working on brownies and things at the moment. And I'm also working full-time doing an event management job in hospitality. So fits quite well in my field.
So I think today we're going to talk about branding, because I know that's something you spent a lot of time getting to grips with. And
Yeah.
we're going to talk about side hustle. In particular, I think we're going to talk about this whole concept that everybody dreams of doing a side hustle, as you are doing, and turning that side hustle into their business, their full-time occupation. And I know that's what you're doing right now, and it's very admirable. And I think sometimes we don't talk about this enough, about how do you actually do that? How do you get the balance right? When do you move from it being a side hustle to a full-time hustle? Do you tell your employer where your future plans are? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think before we do, I'd just love to understand where Tipsy Bakes started. What was the reason for starting the business?
Well, to be honest, it's always that thing that there's a gap in the market, and basically my market was me, because I've got a background working and managing bars. So I always love a cocktail, like cocktails are my go-to drinks. But I love sweets and cakes and things like that as well. And my favourite cocktail is a margarita. And I was just thinking, if I could have a margarita cupcake, I'd be in absolute heaven. So that's essentially where the idea came from. And I just sort of took some ideas from my past experiences, things that I like. And I thought, if I'm looking for something like that, then other people definitely will be as well.
And what were the first few steps that you took to make it a real business?
A lot of it was consumer research, so seeing what kind of flavours, other companies that are out there, basically looking to see if anyone did what I did. So it was a case that I found a lot of people, well, some people did alcohol-infused things, but not quite in the way that I did it. So that really gave me power to think, okay, I can really go for this. I looked a lot at sort of like friends and family, see if, get honest opinions from them, see if it's something they would buy. Went to events and saw, what kind of stalls that they had there. So, yeah, I did mainly research, yeah.
And was it then you made the products and put it into the market? How did you get, I guess, your first purchase? How did the actual business begin as far as transactions are concerned?
It was literally a case of me posting on my Instagram, here, look, this is something I made. And, one person was like, oh, that looks really good. Would you be able to do something like this? And at the time I was like, oh, I don't know, but I'll definitely give it a try. And then it just sort of grew from then, really. And I'm quite proud about the things that I put out there. So I very quickly, got stickers and business cards and things like that. So by that point, it started to feel like a proper business. So.
And were the initial inquiries through Instagram, then did you just take their orders and take payment and start doing delivery yourself? Or did you have, what was the long-term plan? Was it B2B? Was it B2C? How did you see it growing?
At that point, it was definitely a B2C, sort of like smaller special occasion type things. So yeah, it was pretty much like a one-man band. I made it, I promoted it, I delivered it, I did the customer service, all of it. So, but that's kind of the way that I like it, because then I know everything's exactly how it should be, and it, keeps to the standard that I want.
So what's the plan to go? I mean, right now you are, as you mentioned in the intro, you have a full-time job, and you're, I guess, side hustling this wonderful idea. And so, what's your thoughts on the moment that this becomes a full-time thing? What's your strategy around that?
So this year I've decided to focus a lot more on bigger events. So I'm going to get out there and do a lot more wedding fairs. And that's where I think my market sort of is those special occasions where, you do want to spend a little bit more. You do want something a little bit more upmarket, a bit more luxury. And then sort of grow that side of things, move towards promotional events, food festivals, that sort of thing. So more of a mass catering style of business.
And so is the thinking that once you get a certain amount of orders, then that's the time that you'll make it your full-time business? Is that what you're thinking?
I think when it gets to the point, obviously I'd love to, I've got to keep the bills running and everything. So I'd probably look to move to like a part-time and then put more effort into that, because at the moment it is finding that balance. It essentially, when I can't do part-time anymore and I have to put everything into the business, it would be at that point when I know I'm like, financially comfortable and it's the right time, and you do have to take a risk. So if that comes before, I'd move to the part-time decision, then that would be it. Yeah,
I think this is the thing that a lot of people listening probably have a similar, can relate to your situation. And I guess it's interesting just kind of working through the psychology of it, because it is scary going full time and being self-employed. The concept that all your bills have to get paid by this business that perhaps you see as a fun project, but can it really turn into something that can pay all the bills? And it is hard, right? I mean, it's a really difficult balance to get right. Because ironically, if you were full-time focused on it, there's probably the argument that it would turn into a business that could do that quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is finding the right time to take that big jump and think, okay, right, I'm putting everything into this business now. Because I've been doing it for just over 3 years, I'm at that point now where it's like, this is the make or break for it. For this year, focus on events. After that, it has to be all in at that point. Yeah.
I think after 3 years as well, I mean, you have built up a brand, you have built up a reputation, you've got existing clients, and you're still doing it, which means you love it, right? I mean, otherwise you would have stopped long ago. You could financially probably afford to stop. It's probably costing you money to build this business. So it also shows how much you love it. Right? But do you also, on the branding side, let's talk about that for a second. What was your process for building the brand?
I just wanted something that reflected my personality and me, and the fun concept of alcohol infused cakes. It's two things that are really, really indulgent, and that's kind of my personality. So I just wanted it to be me, but in a product, because then it's something you've got confidence in selling it. Your quality's there. It sells itself really if you're the force behind it.
Yeah, and I guess once the brand is built up, you also have that loyal client base, and hopefully that can lead to a point where you feel comfortable enough to go full time on it. Do you ever consider getting an investor? Is that something that ever crossed your mind to help that next step happen?
It is something that I have thought about, looked at, but I think for me it had to be, if I'm going to get this investor, what direction am I going in? Because like I said, prior to this year, I was doing like more quantity but smaller orders. So things like birthdays, like Valentine's specials, things like that. So now that I know the direction that I definitely want to go in, it would be now time to start looking at getting an investor.
I think this is very wise, actually, for the listeners to pick up on this point. Sometimes it is easy to get an investor, believe it or not. A lot of people don't think that's true, but that is actually true.
Yeah.
There's lots of people that will be willing to give you money, but what you have to be careful of, and what you're highlighting there, which I think is really important for people to pick up on, is you've got to know where you're taking it. Because if you get an investor and you don't know where you're taking it, then it won't be fun. Because the investor might have a different expectation to your expectation, and the process gets derailed. So it's better to be patient, I think is what I take from your point, and make sure you know what you want before you bring an investor. What about crowdfunding? Have you looked at that? I know, again, it's probably a planning point, but have you looked at crowdfunding? Any thoughts on that?
I haven't particularly looked at crowdfunding. Something that came up quite a lot for me was, because it's a product that contains alcohol, it can kind of not put people off, but it makes your target market a bit smaller. So it's not really something that I've considered, because just for things like health reasons and things like that, it might not necessarily be the direction people want to go in.
When I think about your business, I think that you could get a drinks company to sponsor you, for example, right? You could actually get an alignment with a drinks brand, and that could then be not only secondary revenue, but support on the marketing for your products. Is that something you've considered?
It is something I've thought about. Like, I follow a lot of the brands that I use like on Instagram and things like that. So I use a lot of like Absolute products because I always want to use like premium spirits and things. So yeah, it is something that I've considered, but obviously not plowed into.
Fair. And I think it's just interesting. It becomes this beginning of a brainstorming session, I guess, between us.
Yeah.
But maybe the listeners listening, or I think sometimes I'm sure will all have situations where they want to work on their business, but their revenue isn't there yet. So we're starting to talk about, I guess, hacks, ways to make it possible, so that you can go and if Absolute came on board as a sponsor and said, hey, look, we'll cover your salary costs, so you can go full time on this and just tag us in the posts, and then everyone wins, right? It's because it is aligned with their messaging anyway. So the other thing I was interested in learning from you was, as you build out this business, do you consider perhaps getting a co-founder? How do you feel about that? Because I don't know what you think your skill gaps are, but I guess having a co-founder could help with that. And for example, if a co-founder, anyone listening, this could be someone listening, wants to help you with sponsorship, maybe they've actually got that skill set and they could come on board and be your co-founder. Is that something you've thought about, or you like being the sole founder?
I think eventually, because it's not something, it needs like extra support behind it at the minute, because it feels like it's my baby. I kind of don't want to like let it go, but when for things to grow, that's what you have to do. So it's definitely something that I am open to, as long as that my values can still stay through, keep the quality of the product and everything, then certainly, yeah.
Again, I think something you're mentioning here is quite important to kind of bring forth, make sure people didn't miss it. I think the point you're making there about value alignment is not something people ask enough in partners. Is your moral code the same? Do you want to, for example, ingredients, right? I feel like your products is all about quality ingredients, and perhaps somebody might come in and say, well, we can get our costs down and make more margin if we reduce, and making sure that in your case you wouldn't want that, right? So making sure that person's aligned with your moral code. It doesn't get asked enough. So when you highlight that, I think that's a really good point. People need to ask themselves before they get into business with people, are we aligned in that way? And so, but it's probably a good thing to write down for yourself, what's important to you, what your values are, and then where your gaps are, so that when that perfect person comes along, you actually notice them. Because sometimes you might not be looking, too busy doing it all on your own.
Yeah, too busy with my head in the mixer driving.
What about e-commerce side? I feel like you've mentioned your strategy around the events business, which of course so well, being in that as your full-time job. But do you think that the e-commerce side is something you could develop? Is that something you've been looking at?
Yeah, it's something that I have tried in the past. So I tried to do it sort of through Etsy and do like a postal version. The only thing that stops me kind of doing e-commerce is because I work full time. If somebody says, I want this order for tomorrow, clicks it, puts it in the basket, pays for it, I don't know if I can commit to that. So it's always finding that way of having a bit of a window to say, yes, I can, or no, I can't. But I know that's the way to go forward, because everybody wants, their answers quickly. Like they want everything at the click of a button. And I think, to be honest, that's the one thing that's stopped me getting further than I am at the moment. So it all comes back to, balancing the full-time job and the side job.
Yeah, again, I think this is something a lot of people will struggle with when wanting to make their side hustle full-time hustle. I think it's quite normal. I guess, do you consider hiring someone to help, or, as I say, getting some sort of support structure in place so that, again, I mean, I wonder if you said to people, order a cake today and it will get delivered in 3 days' time. Personally, I would be okay with that. So maybe is it too much pressure on yourself to make thinking people want that? If you order something and you could deliver it in 3 days, I'm sure. Is that something you've thought about?
It is, but for me, I find a little bit that when people order my products, it's for an occasion. So they kind of need to know 3 days in advance that, okay, yes, I do want that and I want it on this date. A lot of times, I'll get a message on a Friday night saying, oh, can you do me an order for tomorrow? I mean, I never say no, but yeah, it's like people decide at that moment that's what they want. So
right, yeah, no, I can just imagine you late night Friday night baking for someone's party, so you deliver, and I think that's a very important part of brand as well, isn't it? Making sure that what you promise you actually do.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a very important part. So I guess I was reading about how you were inspired by programs like The Apprentice and Dragon's Den. And do you see yourself pitching on Dragon's Den sometime in the future?
Dragon's Den more so than The Apprentice, yeah. I mean, for me, I believe in the products that I could pitch that no problem. It's the, going back to the idea of knowing exactly what direction I want to take the business in. I've got to the application page before, but haven't fully gone through with it.
Where do you see the business going? Have you got a vision? Are you still thinking it through, or would you like to share with the audience? Maybe the audience can give you some feedback.
To be honest, I've always said I don't really want a shop because I don't want to be in just one position. I do want to be sort of like that pop-up event that travels, can be, in the north, in the south. Basically celebration events, fun events, product launch events, things like that. So everything that's a pop-up is where I'd like to take the business, to be honest.
I always tell people you should always have your pitch ready for the time you get in the lift and Elon Musk is there.
Yeah.
You're suddenly like, hey, I want to make cakes for your astronauts,
Are you on board?
Yeah, I want you on board as a partner. But I think it's very interesting, isn't it? Sometimes deciding what you want. And I think a business is meant to be fun. I think that sometimes gets lost. And what resonates with your message is you're wanting to enjoy the process as opposed to just necessarily make it a big business, which I think is pretty cool, actually. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes there is an obsession with just, I want to make a business big. And what you're saying is, I want to make the business right for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's something you're considering, right, very carefully. But I can say, and I'm sure all the listeners will feel the same when they look at your Instagram page and see the pictures of the product. I look at it and see so much potential. And so part of me wants to kind of help you get there quicker, and be able to give it the full time. Because it is self-fulfilling, isn't it? If you don't have a full-time focus, then like you say, you can't make the delivery commitments. If you can't make the delivery commitments, you're not getting enough revenue in to justify making it full-time. So it's catch-22, really.
Yeah. Something that was quite interesting, when I was furloughed from this my full-time job, I had all the time that I needed, and it was just incredible to see how much it grew during that process. And that really made me think, this gave me the confidence to think it is just time that's stopping me. So it's definitely something I've looked at, like trying different jobs that give me more time, or, cutting down hours to spend more time on the business.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a process you have to go through. I mean, if you look at what people say in life when they come to the end of their lives, most people will say they only regret what they didn't do. Mm-hmm. No one regrets doing something, even if it fails, because it was an experience and you tried and you had that story. And I think people only regret what they didn't do. And so, and I'm clearly, as an entrepreneur myself, a big fan of people being entrepreneurs. I think it gives incredible freedom, but it is a step going out there into the world and leaving that secure revenue that's really, really tough. And so not to be underestimated. But I hope today's podcast, people hearing your story, people will go onto your social media now. We'll put all the links below, see what I see, which is a brilliant entrepreneur with wonderful, tasty products, and give you lots of nice comments and encourage you to go for it. Because I definitely think if you did, this would be a top UK brand, if not global. But you do have a website, right? You've built a website and people can buy on the website right now.
Yeah, I did all my website myself, so they can go onto it, which is tipsy-bakes.uk, getting the whole name in there.
Fantastic. No, well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. Myself, and I'm sure the listeners will now be following you, waiting for your next step and next move. And I personally am going to go order a cake, and I'll be very patient. I'm not going to order it for an event. I'm going to order it for myself, and I'm happy to wait 4 or 5 days, whatever it takes to eat one of those wonderful cakes. The pictures are just amazing with your products. So really fantastic.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, congratulations on building a business that you're enjoying, and we wish you luck.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.